Chapter 1. "Here comes the raccoon's mama," a youngster called to his family, indicating me with a jerk of his thumb. As of that moment, I ceased to be an individual in and of my own right, and began playing second fiddle to a wild animal baby, no larger than a mother cat's fuzzy month-old kitten. Funny thing was that I loved it. Now, not everyone can play second fiddle to a raccoon. You aren't always given the opportunity. If you are camping, he may emerge from the murky depths of the forest to steal your food. If you happen to live in the forest, as I did, he will call on you regularly and beg for a handout. But not many people become hopelessly adopted. I was. That is, until a certain night I was. But in the beginning, to the thousands of folk who came to vacation in this big California Redwood State Park, I was less a lady ranger than a ways and means of wrangling a visit with Frosty. Once in his clutches, how they fussed and gurgled and cooed over him. You should have seen the way they crowded onto the porches of my cabin, both front and back, and peered through all the windows. Every pane of glass was a mess of nose prints from June, when Frosty took me over, until September, when all the visitors with children went home. Did I say took me over? He just about took over the entire park, as one of the largest state parks in California, Big Basin, a truly majestic stand of coast redwood giants, 67 miles of south of San Francisco, nestled deep in the Santa Cruz Mountains. More than 1 million people a year come here from everywhere on earth to marvel at these very old, tall, massive trees. Many bring baskets of food, red check tablecloths, obviously, and coffee pots. They picnic all day. Others come loaded down with tents and sleeping bags and set up camp in one of the park's many inviting campsites for a week or two. Together they manage to stuff the huge green garbage cans full to overflowing. It's plain to see why the deer and raccoons have always looked upon Big Basin as heaven on earth. What amazed me over the years was the number of campers who actually didn't know what a raccoon was. I remember especially one frightened lady who pounded on my door in the middle of the night and breathlessly exclaimed that a monkey was loose in her camp. "He stands on his hind legs, and I'm sure he's going to spring against my throat," she panted. Well, I dressed, picked up my big flashlight, and went down to camp with her. Sure enough, there in the ring of light from her Coleman lantern was not only her monkey, but his brother, and they were both interested in standing on their hind legs. After all, 2 people giving them undivided attention would be twice as good as just one. Excellent mathematics. They were so eager to play one-way catch with us that they were almost dancing from one foot to the other in anticipation, their eyes gleaming out of those black masks they wore. "See," the woman exclaimed. "They're getting ready to jump on us." I nearly laughed out loud. They aren't really. But they are playing social call. Let's entertain them. Entertain them? Sure, it'll be fun. Do you have any leftover bread or cookies or fruit? For a moment, the camper stared at me as if I weren't bright. Then, without a word, she went to her food locker beside the barbecue pit and selected several stale rolls and a chunk of angel food cake. "They'll love these," I said, tearing one of the rolls into pieces. For the next hour, in the dead of the night, I showed my new friend what her monkeys had in mind. We tossed and they caught until there wasn't anything left. By this time, the camper had become so completely enchanted with her visitors that she could hardly wait for morning so that she could buy one more piece of grocery good for them. The way she spent her vacation money on day-old bakery goods, it's a wonder our garbage can cafeterias didn't go out of business. And she even took to sleeping a lot in the daytime so she could be more nocturnal. She was turning into a raccoon. No, I'm just kidding. That's not what this says. Chapter 1, Part 2. The afternoon she finally pulled up stakes and left for home, she told me that this vacation was the first contented one she had since her husband died several years earlier, and furthermore, she announced she'd be back next summer with a station wagon full of hors d'oeuvres for the Big Basin natives. Here, that apparently means raccoons. And she did. I only wish I could take one of the darlings home, she confided just before she drove away. I knew how the woman felt. Hadn't I wanted one for my own all the 18 years I've been a summer ranger on the cruise of the state redwood parks? Before Frosty came to me, I would ask, why don't I grab one of those coons that come to visit me and keep it for a pet? The answer was quite simple. In the first place, I valued my hands very highly. In the second, I didn't want to steal a little raccoon from his family and make a wretched prisoner of him. Yet, I always wished that somehow one would choose to come and live with me. But none ever did. Instead, I had to be content with the furry mob of as many as 20 raccoons that rumbled in and always out of my kitchen in the evenings. It was good to know, however, that they weren't afraid to come into my home, sometimes on winter evenings, that they'd even come clear into my living room and sit around my pot-bellied stove and share late-night snacks with me. Only one of them had ever abused my hospitality and had to be banished from the family circle. I was right behind him, too, when he made that scrambling exit. For in one of his hands, he clutched my pearls, in the other, my charm bracelet. It was a Pandora charm bracelet. I just really like to commemorate things in my life with Pandora charms. The rest of the coons now made no move to explore my bedroom and get into my personal things. And by midnight, they were always ready to troop out and disappear into the cold darkness of the giant forest. I loved these friends of mine. Each was an individual as any human. Each had a personality that was his alone and that included a healthy amount of mischief. But all of them combined couldn't possibly have caused the uproar that one little raccoon named Frosty later created all by himself. Chapter 1, Part 3. When I first saw him, I had no inkling of such utter pandemonium, of course. He was so tiny, such a baby pony, and frightened. A 9-year-old boy had come to my cabin door and was standing there, snuggling him inside his jacket. A tree fell on his family, the youngster explained. I saw it. This is the only one left. I had to bring him in. I knew Gary well. He had been coming to Big Basin with his parents every summer for years. In that time, he'd been on countless nature hikes with me. He had listened to many campfire talks on the inhabitants of the redwood forest, and he learned that because their mothers are usually not far away, you leave baby wild animals where you find them. Now he was looking at me with the misery in his eyes for what I must be thinking. I had to take care of him, he explained. There was no one else. Of course you did, Gary, I assured him with sympathy. Come on in and tell me about it. There was no doubt that this boy had just received a terrible shock. The natural toppling of a tree in a forest such as this is an earth-shaking experience, never to be forgotten by anyone who witnesses it. Then, to find out that the dying giant had destroyed some of our coons was almost too much to bear. Fighting tears, he looked down into the cute, masked face of the catastrophe's only survivor, a tiny wild thing who is now without his loved ones. This is the first time I've ever touched a raccoon. I wish he were mine, Gary murmured wistfully, stroking the soft fur around the coon's ears. I know, I said, understanding just how he felt. Now make yourself comfortable in that big chair there and tell me how you were able to pick him up. A few minutes passed before Gary could put it all into words. He had tried to interpretive dance it for the last 30 minutes, but we weren't getting anywhere fast. Then, in a low voice that trembled, he said, It was awful, Miss Weaver. The way the big tree fell, the noise, everything. It was like in a bad storm, and then in an earthquake, and then the little coon's family just disappeared. I could see that Gary was finding the memory of it painful to remember, and I waited silently until he was able to go on with his account. The ground shook, and the redwood limbs and needles fell for a long, long time. Then it got awful and quiet out there in the forest. I couldn't move. I was just so scared. Then I heard a sort of cry, and in a minute, there he was. There I was too, his first human. He had no mother to run to for help. Well, what did you do? I asked. Well, Gary continued, after taking a deep breath, I sat down on the trail and started talking to him real easy like. Did he come to you? No, not at first. He backed away from me. Then he began to cry, louder and louder all the time. Then all of a sudden, I said, "Hey girl, it's okay." And just like that, he came wobbling towards me. His legs aren't very steady yet, I told him. They sure aren't, Gary agreed, smiling wanly. And you know, he seemed glad when I took him in my hands and held him close to me. I think it made him feel safe. I couldn't help noticing Gary's hands. They were rather square, like robot hands, and you couldn't have called them good-looking, but they were gentle. And they were giving one small raccoon the confidence that these humans were going to be all right. They told him that, even though he was now an orphan, someone cared and was going to take care of him. He can't be very old, Gary said. For a moment, I studied the furry body. A month, maybe 5 weeks, I imagine. A raccoon kit's little eyes aren't open for about 3 weeks. He probably was born in the middle of May. Look at him shiver, the boy said, carefully wiping some dew from the fur on top of the raccoon's head. He looked like he had some frost on him when I picked him up. It was cold out there this morning. Okay, Frosty, don't be afraid. We'll take care of you and get you warm. Brightening with a new thought, he added, "Let's call him Frosty." It's a good name, I answered, smiling at his pleasure over the idea. As Gary continued holding the little fellow tight against him to ease its trembling, I thought, this lad will someday be a man of the forest. He understands wild ones, and they sense his love for him like Florida. Florida? Florida. As much as he's heard us talk about leaving wild babies where they are, he still has the good judgment to know when it is right to bring one in for care. Bless him for that and his warm heart. I wish he were mine, he said again. I could feel his enormous yearning. I could see what courage it had taken for him to bring the little raccoon into me, knowing that he would then have to give it up. My heart went out to him. Gary, where do you live? In San Francisco, he replied miserably. I know I couldn't keep him, even if you could have let me. He's got to live in a forest or a stream bottom and go wild when the time comes. I just wish he were mine. I can't help it. I just do. Until the war, my home was in Southern California, I told him, in a small town in orange and lemon country. I taught there. Now, in a year or so after I complete the writing I'm working on, I want to return to my school. But even in a small town like that one, do you know how long a pet raccoon would last? Do you know how many boys around there have rifles and just one thought in mind? To kill every wild thing they can? Only a person who lives out in the country or next to a game reserve would stand a chance of raising an animal such as this. Gary's eyes widened. Well, what will become of... I hurried to reassure him. Don't worry, son. You've saved this baby raccoon's life. Now I'll see what I can do to get him back to his natural home alive. You'll not cage him or let him get shot. You can be sure I won't, Gary, I promised. For a time, this cabin will have to be his world, but as soon as he's old enough to look after himself and wants to be free, he will be. One way or another, he will be. That's the way you and I believe. Gary nodded solemnly, and after a moment added, This summer I've decided I'm going to be a ranger when I grow up. Then I can have all the wild animals I want, and there'll be live ones too, who come and see me, like your raccoons and deer, not dead ones that I've shot. Maybe I'll join the Fish and Wildlife Service and become a game warden like Mr. Noel, but I'll be something like that anyhow. Whichever service gets you, Gary, will be fortunate, I predicted, and I meant it. So the boy left the tiny raccoon with me that morning, promising to come back and play with him every day until his vacation was over. The night before his family broke camp, Gary came to hold his raccoon for the last time. Tears glistened in his eyes when he said goodbye, but his eyes shone as he talked about the day Frosty would go wild again and once again be with his own kind. Many years have passed since that night. Gary is now grown, and within him must be the same fine warmth and understanding that he showed that summer when he thought more of a raccoon's welfare than he did of his own immediate pleasure. Unfortunately, he never became a ranger. Instead, he grew up to be a miserable lawyer.